Hi everyone, it's Kristen and welcome back to my channel for another DIY video. I'm so excited today because today's video is going to be a really fun quilting video. You may remember a few videos back I shared an unboxing of a quilt kit that I was super excited about. The quilt kit was called Prairie Garden and it is by My Fabric Addiction over on Etsy, and we have partnered together to bring you this tutorial today about how to put together the entire quilt top for the Prairie Garden quilt. So this is a gorgeous quilt. I just love the brick pattern and the beautiful bright floral colors. Let me see if I can undo the whole thing. It's a beginner friendly quilt, so with just a small amount of knowledge about your sewing machine, you can totally do this quilt, and this video is going to help you. If you prefer to read or see photos versus a video, or you need extra help, I'll also have a link to a blog post down below where I have photos and the instructions all written out as well. My Fabric Addiction over on Etsy has so many beautiful quilt kits. You just have to go and check them out. I love that they come with pretty much everything that you need to complete the quilt. It makes it just so simple, especially if you're a beginner at quilting. This is the perfect thing for you without having to go to the store and buy a bunch of different types of yardage and making sure they match and all of that. This is so much more simple. I highly recommend it. All right, without further ado, let's jump right into the tutorial. So this video today is going to cover how to put together the actual top of the quilt. If you need to know how to do the binding or the backing and that sort of a thing, we'll have other videos linked for you in the description box, so that way you can follow those tutorials to finish up the quilt completely. So once you get your quilt kit, the first thing that I recommend that you do is go ahead and put the colored or the floral rectangles in stacks with the white squares on top. So this is going to be the way that we're going to sew them. So you want right sides together, and we're just gonna align just like that. And I went through my whole pile, randomly choosing colors out and stacking them up just like this. So I did that for my whole stack, and once you have your whole stack here, you can take them over to your sewing machine and start sewing. So the first bit of sewing that we're gonna do is to take this, and using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, we're gonna sew a straight stitch all the way down this short side of the block, and that will put these two together. Just like. All right, let's get started sewing. So just like we had them lined up in our pile before, we have right sides facing together. Make sure that the rectangle and the square are lined up well. So once the piece is all lined up, I'm going to put it under my piecing foot. So this here is a piecing foot, a 1/4 inch piecing foot that I use for all of my quilting. It ensures that I get a perfect 1/4 inch seam pretty much every time. They're super cheap on Amazon. I'll have this one linked in the description box down below if you're interested in it. So I'm just lining that up with my little 1/4 inch guide there. I am putting my stitch length at 2.0 rather than 2.5, and we're just going to sew a straight 1/4 inch seam all the way down. Now, because this quilt has many of these pieces that you need to quilt just one after the other, I recommend doing something called chain piecing, which is where you don't pull this off your machine and cut the thread and all that. Just leave it there and pull up your next piece and slide that under the presser foot and then begin sewing again. What will happen is they'll be connected by these little threads, and they'll end up looking like this. And then after you're done, you can go through and go ahead and cut them and then put your rows together. All right, let's do one more. We make sure that it is lined up because they probably shifted at least a little bit. And all I do is lift up my presser foot, put it back down. I don't even need to adjust my needle on my machine, and I just go again. Then once we've gone through all of those and gotten them finished, then it's time to actually connect these to make a long row. We have 7 of these in each row. So we're gonna go through and connect them. So we're gonna take another piece that we've sewn. We're gonna do right sides together, and we're gonna use a 1/4 inch seam right down this side and connect these two. So once I have a bunch sewn together, I remove them from the sewing machine, and then I like to use my little thread cutter over here just to cut them apart. Just like that. And now I'm going to show you how to start putting together the rows so we have that long piece. So I just do this right at my sewing machine. I put down a piece of fabric with the floral side on the right, and then because we're staggering these, we do not want to line up another floral one on top, right? We want to use the white square and line that up there. And then put that in the machine, and we're sewing a 1/4 inch seam all the way down. So now we're starting to get our rows put together. I'll show you one more. So just grab another one from your pile, place it on there, make sure it's all lined up under the presser foot. Okay, so that is how we piece together our individual blocks and then put them together in our rows. The next step, once you're done with this, is to press the seams, so I'll meet you over at the ironing board. The first thing I like to do is trim the extra pieces of thread, like the really long ones, from where we pieced everything together. Now we're gonna set our seams. I have my nice hot iron here. Setting your seams is going to just kind of lock the stitch in place and just hold those fibers together. It's just a really good idea. So when you set your seams, you're just gonna place your iron down on the seam for just a couple seconds. I like to use steam. You don't have to if you don't want to. And that's all you're gonna do. We're gonna move to the next seam. Make sure it's nice and flat. We're gonna let it set it down. We're not gonna wiggle it. We're not gonna smush it. You can distort your fabric by doing that. You do not wanna do that. Here we go again. All right, we are pressing the seams to the dark side. So we're gonna make sure everything is pulled. So that means we're gonna push it to this side, not to this side. We're gonna go this side. So just make sure everything's nice and flat here. You wanna make sure that this seam is opened as much as it can be. Again, we're not gonna be shaking and moving it back and forth. We're just simply telling that seam which direction we want it to lay, and this will give us the best look in the long run. Just tell that seam we want you to go in toward the colored part. Same thing over here, just like that. All right, and now all of our seams are pressed and it's ready to attach to the main quilt top. So once we have the rows done and we have pressed the seams, it's time to start putting the rows together to build the top of the quilt. So in order to get this beautiful kind of staggered pattern that we have going on here, almost like bricks, we are going to line up our rows opposites here. So we don't want to line them up with two white squares here together. That's not going to give us the look that we want. We are alternating white square, colored square, white square, colored square, and on like that. So to piece these together, we're doing right sides together. You can pen them if you need to, and then we're using a 1/4 inch seam to go all the way down to connect. All right, here we go. Here's our white square, here's our colored square. We're lining them up. Again, I don't really see a need to pin, but if you want to, that is totally fine. There's certainly no harm in it. All right, so it's all lined up. All right, needle goes down, making sure to keep everything lined up as we go. When you get to a seam, it's a good idea to encourage it to lay whatever direction it is that you want it to lay. So in this case, we want it to lay toward the colored fabric. So I'm just kind of making sure that happens. And then we're gonna come up on seams on the underside as well. We did press them, so they should be laying pretty flat, but sometimes they can get caught up in the feed dogs down here and it'll mess it up. So this one I need to be laying back that direction. So I'm just gonna feel and make sure it's nice and flat as I go under the needle and through the feed dogs, just to ensure that it stays that way. Same thing for this seam, just to encourage, whoops, see we're getting out of, there we go. Encourage it to go the right direction. And readjust the fabric as needed. So now that you have all of your rows together and your quilt top is done, it's time to move on to your backing and putting your batting fabric in and quilting, and then finishing up your quilt by putting the binding strips on. Again, we're gonna have videos linked for you in the description box down below if you need help with those things. But thank you so much for joining me for this tutorial today. I really hope it was helpful. Again, you can grab your quilt kit over on Etsy at My Fabric Addiction. It will be linked in the description box down below for you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below and I'll make sure to get back with you. Also, again, you can find instructions over on my website along with photographs if that is your preferred method of learning. Thank you so much for watching this video today, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.